we will remain that shining city on the hill. But if we choose to disregard those principles, then we may be what Reverend Winthrop warned, become a byword and a story for the ages. I don't believe that's what the American people are choosing. Some of our leaders in Washington may so choose, but that's not what the American people are choosing.
How do you take us to that next level of our destiny? What acts as president? Leadership, yes, but what acts in leadership would you use to take us to that next level of our destiny beyond the shining city on the hill?
What I would do as President of the United States is make the case and make the defense why the Constitution of the United States must be observed. And we can do that quite simply through bills like Obamacare. Obamacare is a bill that simply must be repealed. Why? Because number one, it has the unconstitutional individual mandate. When the federal government can tell any American that they can buy, that they must, as a condition of citizenship, purchase a product or service, whether it's against their will, effectively the United States government will be dictating that price, and they will become a dictator over our lives. This is an issue that must be solved in 2012, because I believe that Obamacare will so metastasize itself into every part of American life that we will never get rid of it again. And this is the foundation for socialized medicine. Make no mistake about it. It will change the face of this nation forever. That's just one issue, but there are others as well. And as President of the United States, I would want to take my background as a tax lawyer to explain why we need to change America's tax system. But before that, I would explain why it's a moral issue for the federal government to be spending almost double what it's currently taking in. Because we're not only expending the capital of previous generations, what they have built up, and current generations, what's even more morally reprehensible is the fact that this current administration is stealing from generations yet unborn to satisfy the growth of government that we can't possibly afford.
If you had to choose between taxing consumption or production, which would be your choice?
I would be choosing taxing consumption over production.
And if you were asked to, and I'm about to ask you this, would you list for us, because you've defined, I think, the future of American exceptionalism in a fashion, could you define for us the pillars of American exceptionalism, those components that are essential if we're to arrive at that level of destiny you talked about?
The pillars of American exceptionalism, I believe, are most profoundly contained in our opening document, which is the Declaration of Independence. And you can rightly call that document the Declaration of American Sovereignty. That's what the American president first must ensure, that we remain a sovereign nation, not a nation that's a part of an international conglomerate where someone else has a say over our rights and over our privileges, but one that deals in American sovereignty. And the nub and the essence of that document was written by Thomas Jefferson when he said that our rights come to us as inalienable rights given to us by God, not by government. And it also goes on to say that our current government rules by our consent. The government cannot make its decisions without our consent. We, the American people, have to let government know that they can make the rules and the laws that we live under. They are not a law unto themselves. That is the difference, and that's the foundation for American exceptionalism.
Are the pillars of American exceptionalism also included in the Bill of Rights?
Yes, because those core principles, as I stated in the very beginning of my opening remarks, that core of what is embodied in the Declaration of Independence is reflected in the Bill of Rights. Whether it is the right to speech, whether it's the right to keep and bear arms, whether it's the right to be free from quartering soldiers in our home, or to be free of unreasonable search and seizure. All of the Bill of Rights are ones that are embodied in the Declaration.
Free enterprise capitalism?
Free enterprise. I'm an unashamed apologist for the free market system. Without it, our business wouldn't survive.
Rule of law?
Rule of law, absolutely.
Did we leave anything out?
Those are pretty good. That's a good down payment.
How about in 36 seconds, can you tell me your view on America's global role in the future?
Well, I believe America's global role in the future, I believe that the United States has been the greatest force for good in 5,000 years of recorded human history. Because of the United States, we have seen global order observed. I think it's important that the United States remain the #1 economic powerhouse of the world and the #1 military powerhouse of the world. The world dynamic will change forever if this alters. And one thing Ronald Reagan understood, you cannot have the greatest military power without economic prosperity to bolster that power. Thank you.
Professor George.
Thank you. Congresswoman Bachmann, thank you for being with us today. My first question concerns the obligations we have to human life and also the constitutional powers of the respective levels and branches of government. Many argue that we need a constitutional amendment to overturn Roe v. Wade. However, Section 5 of the 14th Amendment expressly authorizes the Congress, by appropriate legislation, to enforce the guarantees of due process and equal protection contained in the amendment's first section. Now, as someone who believes in the inherent and equal dignity of all members of the human family, including the child in the womb, would you as President propose to Congress appropriate legislation pursuant to the 14th Amendment to protect human life in all stages and conditions?
Yes, I would. I would put forward a human life amendment, and at the same time, I would do everything within my power to restrict the number of abortions that occurs in the United States. Perhaps no other federal law has done more good for prohibiting abortion than the Hyde Amendment. And I would do everything I could to keep out the taxpayer funding of abortion.
Can I follow up?
Yes.
Because, as I say, some people believe that a constitutional amendment would be needed to overturn Roe versus Wade. And short of that, the best we can do is put some limitations around the edges and prohibit federal funding, as we've done in the Hyde Amendment. But my question goes to a matter of constitutional principle concerning the respective roles of the government. President Lincoln famously said in his first inaugural address that if we permit the policy of the government on matters that are essential to the whole people to be determined simply by the Supreme Court, we will have abdicated our responsibility, handed over self-government to that eminent tribunal, as Lincoln said. So given the clear mandate of the 14th Amendment empowering Congress to enforce the guarantee of equal protection, shouldn't Congress act on that now?
Yes, I believe that they should. And it is not only Abraham Lincoln that subscribed to that view, Thomas Jefferson did as well.
That's right.
Because Thomas Jefferson understood that of the three branches of government, the most important was the United States Congress, consisting of the House and the Senate. The second would be the executive. And the third, and a far distant third, was considered the Supreme Court of the United States. If the Supreme Court, by a plurality of the justices, may impose their own personal morality on the rest of the nation, then we are quite literally being ruled by those individuals as opposed to giving our consent to the people's representatives. So most assuredly, that power does lie within the representatives and the Senate, the people's representatives in the United States Congress.
And if it meant a confrontation with the Supreme Court, are you prepared for that?
Most assuredly.
Congresswoman, will the person you choose as your vice presidential running mate share your pro-life convictions and your belief in marriage as the union of husband and wife?
Yes, without a doubt, that will be.
In Illinois, after passing a civil unions bill, the state government decided to exclude certain religiously affiliated foster care and adoption agencies, including Catholic and Protestant agencies, because the agencies, in line with the teachings of their faith, cannot in conscience place children with same-sex partners. Now, at least half of Illinois' foster and adoption funds come from the federal government. Should the federal government be subsidizing states that discriminate against Catholic and other religious adoption agencies in this way?
I believe in equal protection under the law. And this is clearly a situation where we have seen a disadvantage to children who are about to be placed either in foster care or in adoptive care. And again, I believe that is one more example why the rulings of activist judges acting outside the original intent of the Constitution are so very dangerous to the foundation of the country. And it goes back to your previous question, which is who has the right to make those rules. I believe as President of the United States, in conjunction with the United States Congress and Senate, that we need to revisit that and change our rules so that we can have an equal protection under the law so that all agencies can provide that important care to children.
But if a state legislature refuses to make funding available on equal terms to those providers who, as a matter of conscience, will not place children in same-sex homes. Should federal legislation come in to protect the freedom of conscience of those religious providers, even if the discrimination comes not from the courts but from the legislature?
Well, yes, I do, because I believe that is a right that is guaranteed to every American under our Constitution and Bill of Rights.
And if I could explore one more constitutional question with you, Congresswoman, I was interested to see, and I think I've understood you correctly, that you've argued not only that the federal mandate, the individual mandate in Obamacare is unconstitutional, but that even a state individual mandate would be unconstitutional. If I've understood your position correctly, that's a new one.
That is correct. I believe it is also unconstitutional
30 seconds.
for states to mandate as a consideration of citizenship, a condition of citizenship, that an individual would have to purchase a product or service even at the state government's behest.
And do you believe that the national Constitution forbids states from doing that?
I believe that it's inherent in the Constitution.
In the national Constitution?
Yes, I do.
So to say it's inherent sounds like there's not a particular provision you can point to.
Well, I'm sure you can enlighten me as to that.
Well, I wanted to know what the provision was.
Thank you very much, Representative Michelle Bachmann. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you for the questions. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
And our next candidate is Herman Cain, a businessman from Georgia. Herman Cain. Here comes Mr. Cain, made his fortune in the pizza industry.
Thank you.
Mr. Cain, you have 3 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you very much. First, let me thank this distinguished panel for inviting me. Thank you, Jim. He didn't want me to call him Senator. Thank you all for being here, and thanks for this opportunity. Let's start with those first principles that you asked us to address, because that's a good way to describe where this nation is. I happen to believe that since the Declaration of Independence inspired the Constitution, that those first principles were in the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal. The founders set the bar high. Even though maybe at the time we were not up at that bar, they set it high because they had a high vision for this nation. A second founding principle, that we are endowed by our Creator, not men. That's one of those principles. Thirdly, with unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I happen to believe that the founders put those in that order for a reason. Because in this great nation of ours, we can pursue happiness all we want to, as long as we don't step on somebody else's liberty toes. We can have all the liberty to do what we want to do in this great nation, as long as we don't take away somebody else's life. Those are three of those first principles. But I happen to believe that the pursuit of happiness in America, which is part of those founding principles, is under attack. And the American people are saying that they want to take it back. And there's one more founding principle located in that document. And it's the one that says, when any form of government becomes destructive of those ideals, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. And that's what the American people are saying right now. We need to do some altering and abolishing. I'm a product of the American dream. I have exceeded all of my American dreams and then some, but it's under attack. And one of the reasons that I'm running for president of the United States is because I believe that God has blessed me with some abilities and skills in order to be able to help get this nation back on track. We have become a nation of crises. We have an economic crisis. We have an energy crisis. We have an immigration crisis. We have a foggy foreign policy crisis, and we have a severe deficiency of leadership crisis. And it's going to take a different kind of leadership in Washington, D.C. to lead this nation to solutions to those crises. My name is Herman Cain. I'm running for president because I believe that I can bring a unique set of leadership skills to the White House.
Thank you, sir. And Representative King, you begin this round of questions.
Thank you, David. Thanks, Mr. Kane. I appreciate you being here, and I